Hello, welcome to Sports Bias with Cleveland J. Somehow my little intro got cut short there. Give me 1 second there. All right, I got music playing in the background, but we will figure it out. So welcome to Sports Bias with Cleveland J. I am super excited for tonight's show. We have our Cincinnati Reds episode. It has been the most talked about and our most trafficked social media post since we announced the airing of this show. I have my good friend Scott Utz and Kevin Trigg joining us tonight. It's going to be good. We've had some really lively debates on the Cincinnati Reds, particularly Pete Rose. We're going to get into that a little bit. And so yeah, it's going to be great. And we have some other special things in line for tonight. I do have several announcements to make, but I'm trying to figure out this music first. So somehow that's still playing. Somehow I have music playing in the background. Let me see if I can find that real quick. All right. I can't. All right. We'll go with it. All right. So just a few announcements. First of all, we have the Ultimate Sports Movie Awards. I remember what happened. I had music on my scene in the background. I figured it out. So we have the Ultimate Sports Movie Awards April 10th. The voting is open till April 1st. You can find the links on our Facebook page and YouTube and Twitter. I think there's 16 different categories. This is just one of them, the hockey category. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So join us April 10th for the Ultimate Sports Movie Awards. We also have 9 March Madness shows. So this is going to be great. Similar to what we did with the Super Bowl, we have all kinds of shows surrounding March Madness. The first one actually is next week, so a little bit before the madness really starts. We have the top basketball players of all time. And then we have a whole host of shows, including our live Knockin' Noggins trivia on Wednesday before the tournament starts. So join us for that. You can get all the links on our Facebook page. Then, super excited about this one, the Mets. I remember that 86 team was one of my favorite teams watching that wasn't a Cubs or Indians team. Loved Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, and that team was a lot of fun to watch. And my buddy Andy Dubitsky, actually, who has a connection to tonight's show, because I met Andy with Kevin, who's on the show tonight. So he was actually our waiter at our Ohio State bar in California. That's kind of how we met. Awesome guy. He's a huge Mets fan. He's definitely a huge Islanders fan, too. So when we get to hockey, we'll do an Islanders show with him as well. So Andy Dubitsky will be joining us for the Mets episode on March 20th. I have our baseball prediction show. I've been doing this since I've been a kid. I've done it since I think I've been 10 years old. Every year I predict who's going to win all the divisions. At some point I started predicting MVPs and stuff like that, but it's more about the division winners, the playoffs, and World Series. And I've done pretty well. Last year I didn't do too well. I had the Padres and White Sox, but usually I've done pretty well. I'm going to go back and kind of see statistically how well I've done. At least pick one World Series participant. But it's a fun show. We're going to talk about possible rookies of the year, possible award winners for Cy Young and MVP and all that stuff. I know it's kind of a crapshoot, but I'm going to give you my opinion anyhow. But if you want to go to Vegas with my picks for who's going to win the divisions, those are going to be pretty good. So that is March 27th. Then, as I push the wrong button again, the Chicago Cubs, my Cubbies episode is coming on April 3rd. I have a whole slew of guests lined up for this episode. Will be a special episode for me, being the Cubs. And so that is April 3rd. We have the Chicago White Sox the week after, actually a couple weeks after that. We have Easter in between. My good friend Bobby McNamara, one of the guys. Again, what I've tried to do with these shows is bring in people that I wanted to connect with or reconnect with from years past. And Bobby and I spent a lot of time together in Chicago, and we used to argue all the time over the White Sox and Indians and White Sox and Cubs. And we used to go to a ton of games together. And I'm thrilled that he's going to be joining us on the White Sox episode so we can give each other a little bit of flack. And we haven't had a whole lot of contact over the last 20 years or so. So that's going to be a really fun episode for me to relive some of those times with Bobby McNamara for the White Sox. And St. Louis Cardinals, our arch nemesis as a Cubs fan, but we are doing a Cardinals episode. You can't help but, as a baseball fan, you can't help but give them respect. As much as I want to give them flack, all I have to do is say 13. We have 13 World Series championships. And they kind of shut me up. But I am doing that with my good friend Sean Wade. Again, somebody that I haven't spoken to much in the last many years. Super great guy. He has, I think, at least one child since the last time we were together, and maybe even two. I'm not quite sure. So I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with Sean and going over the St. Louis Cardinals. That's gonna be a fun one. Obviously, with a rich tradition of the Cardinals, that's gonna be a fun episode. So join us for all those. All that information is on our Facebook page and Twitter and also Facebook. And go vote. Go vote for the movie awards. And make sure when you vote, share your votes out. There's all kinds of different categories. Pick a category and share it with your followers on Facebook or Twitter or Twitch or whatever social media is on. We're also on TikTok. So if you're on TikTok, you can follow us there as well. And definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to open up some extra benefits. So we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That'll give us a little bit more flexibility, better quality stream, and things like that. So definitely like us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, so the Cincinnati Reds episode. I'm gonna do something real quick. Now that I have this here, I'm gonna put a little bit of background noise on here. There we go. I love this. All right, so our Cincinnati Reds episode. So Scott is joining us tonight. Scott Utz. He actually was on our Noggin Super Bowl trivia show as well. So if you watched that, you saw Scott and his brother Chuck on that episode. We had a lot of fun. Again, another guy that I met out in California, like Kevin, and just wanted to reconnect with him. I always, thought he was a really great guy and enjoyed our times together, and just thought he was a really cool dude, and wanted to reconnect with him and his girlfriend Jennifer. And so far we've done that, and I'm thrilled I got to see her a little bit tonight as we were setting up the show, so that was great. So I'm going to bring on Scott as long as he's unmuted. All right, Scott, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Jay.
How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you?
So have you recovered from your Super Bowl Noggins episode?
Yeah, I just did yesterday.
Did you win that? Or did
No,
Cindy
I
win?
did not.
Yeah, you did not win. Sorry, I didn't bring
Cindy
it.
won.
Cindy won. I think she had some cheating going on there. I don't know. Cindy, if you're watching, and speaking if you're watching, feel free to put your comments about what we're talking about tonight, your favorite Reds, anything you disagree with or agree with in the chat on Facebook or in the comments, or chat on YouTube in the comments on Facebook, and we'll get them. We will see them come up, and we can bring them on the screen if we need to. But yeah, Scott, that was a lot of fun. There's Chuck right there. See? Chuck won. I don't think so. Chuck said he won.
Yeah.
I think Cindy won.
He always thinks he wins.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to have Chuck back on the show, and maybe we're doing a Raiders episode or something. He's a Raiders fan, is he not?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, so again, I've been looking forward to the show. Being a baseball fan, obviously I didn't grow up a Reds fan, but I respect them, and there's a lot of tradition. Growing up with those big red machine and all those players, I knew this was going to be a tough show for me. I will say, I think the lineup portion of this was relatively easy. We were talking a little bit before the show. They tended to disagree with me a little bit. Chuck won last place. That's what he was saying. Chuck won last place. That's probably more accurate. So I thought the lineup part was pretty easy. Easier than the other shows I've done so far. The Mount Rushmore, however, was not. I knew the Mount Rushmore was going to be really, really difficult. But Scott, if you can tell me a little bit about the process you went through with this, and kind of what the experience was like prepping for the show.
For me, I became a Reds fan in the 70s, and I was so young at the time that, to be honest with you, the memories of the 70s teams aren't super vivid. So I had to kind of go back and read up on some of that stuff. My more vivid memories are probably from the 90s on. And so I tend to kind of lean towards a lot of the players that we've had during the last 20, 30 years. But it was fun. It was fun going back and reading about some of the old teams, especially the Big Red Machine. And then I even went back a little further and read up on some of the players prior to that, which I really didn't know much about at all. So, yeah, it was fun.
lot of tradition there. You know, one thing I think I have to look this up because I caught this just before you guys came on the pre-show. That they were like the red leggings until like the 70s, like late 60s, early 70s. They weren't actually the Reds. I mean, they called them the Reds, but officially, I think officially they were the red leggings for up until like late 60s or something, which I didn't know.
I knew that too. I just didn't know when they changed. I thought it was prior to that too.
Yeah, and I could be wrong. I just kind of saw it in passing because it had dates on it and it said red leggings. I'm like, what? I had no clue. So I'll have to look that one up. So another thing that happened, and kind of my idea for the show never really materialized until I talked to Scott, is when we did shows from different areas, I wanted to be drinking beers or sample beers from that area as well. And I kind of just lost track of it in getting the show ready and launched and so forth. And then Scott so nicely sent me some Cincinnati beers to try. I can't turn this around. So I just tried, where's it? Oh, this is from Rheingeist, right? Saber-Tooth Tiger.
Yep.
That's the Imperial Pale Ale. This was really good. This was my pre-show beer. Scott made me wait for this one. This is the Mad Tree. Are you ready for that one or should I wait?
No, let's wait a little bit.
That means I have to wait for a drink. All right. You let me know when you're ready. So we'll probably take a break this is going to kill me. So yeah, he sent me this one, Mad Tree, rounding third. It's a red India Pale Ale. So I'm super excited about trying this. So yeah, I love trying beers, and I did not familiar with either one of these. Scott, can you tell me a little bit about this other one you sent me? This isn't a Cincinnati beer, is it?
Yeah, that's also a Rheingeist.
Oh, it is? All right.
Yeah, and that's something new they just came out with. It's kind of like a upper echelon version of it. Yeah. So I was actually curious. Have you tried that one yet?
No, I was saving it. It's like the bottle is beautiful. So it's a barrel-aged, black is beautiful, Imperial Oatmeal Stout. It's like 14% alcohol. The bottle's beautiful. I mean, it's stunning. Go this way. So yeah. I will crack this open for sure.
I'm curious to see what you think of that. I know you like stouts.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. For some reason, I didn't know it was Rheingeist until I saw the logo. So anyway, a little beer addition to the show tonight. All right. So we are going to get moving on to our first segment. And we're going to have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about tonight. Chuck says yum. Of course, Chuck says yum. I like that idea you have for a beer show, Scott. I think you should roll with it. As long as I get to be a guest often. You can't have Kevin Trigg on as a guest because he drinks crap beer. Sorry, Kevin. Right. He's drinking like Michelob Ultra or some crap tonight. He usually drinks Bud Light. My buddy Joe's on the show. Joe, see on the screen, he's let me see, talking sports and drinking beers. Yeah, I know it's rough. It's rough living, Joe. I know. Joe is actually my co-host for the Ultimate Sports Movie Awards. So you saw him on the nomination show. And Joe, speaking of which, we need to talk so we can do some promotional videos on that as well. So thank you for joining us, Joe. The Reds' all-time lineup. Let's get moving forward. Oh yeah, I did it again. This scene that I put together that I like, I forget that I have it, and then we didn't use it. There's only one time I did it. Anyway. Let's go. All right. So, like I said, Scott, I'm going to get your opinion before we get started on this, but and I'm just telling you right now, you need to hurry on that other beer, the one you're drinking, because
all right.
Don't go too fast. I don't want to, there's not much there. So yeah, like I said, I thought the lineup portion of this was really easy for me. There's a couple positions where you can, just slightly have a debate on. I know Kevin has a little bit better or a different opinion on some of these, and Kevin's going to come on after this. Kevin Trigg's going to join us after this segment to give us the reactions to our lineups. And it pretty much doesn't matter what I say, he's going to disagree with. It's kind of how our friendship goes. He's just going to give me shit for whatever I say, even though he knows I'm always right and he's always wrong. But he's going to give our reactions. But I thought this was relatively chalk and easy. Scott, what do you think?
I think it's easy. I don't like, unlike you, I don't think that it was simple. I think there was at least 3 or 4 positions that I kind of went back and forth with.
Can you tell me, without giving names yet, can you tell me which positions those were?
First base, shortstop. Pretty much first base and shortstop were the two for sure. Maybe third base.
Yeah, third base. That's one of the ones because there's a wild card in here. That's why I left the DH in here. I understand that there isn't a DH in the National League, and I have to say that I hate, even though I'm an Indians fan, I hate American League Baseball compared to National League Baseball. I love not having the DH or not having the DH. I think they are having it now, but yeah, I threw the DH in there to make it a little bit easier and to get an extra player in there for us. Third base could be tricky. Shortstop, it shouldn't be. That's your heart talking, Scott. And first base, yes, I can see that there's some. It's not as clear cut, I don't think, but still. So let's start at first base. So what I'm going to do when Scott gives me his players, I'm going to kind of type them in here and move them into position. All right. So who do you have for the best first baseman in the all-time lineup for the Reds, Scott?
That would have to be Mr. Joey Votto.
On the figures, I changed my thing here, so now I gotta refigure this. Hold on, give me 1 second. Bear with me. It gives you time to drink that beer. Let's go down.
I'm good. Whenever you're ready, I'm good.
22. Let's go there. No effects. Joey Votto. Move this into position here. All right. So you said first base was a little tricky for you. What else? Who else were you considering there, and why did you go with Votto?
Well, I think another option would have been Tony Perez. But I also happen to like, when you say my heart speaking, two of my favorite players all-time Reds were first baseman and Hal Morris and Sean Casey.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Sean Casey might have been the slowest player in the history of Major League Baseball. Yeah, I was a big Sean Casey fan. He came up with the Indians and broke in with the Indians, so I was a fan of his. Hal Morris, Hal Morris went to that school up north, so I wasn't a huge fan of his.
Hal Morris, he was a big part of that season. They won the series in 1990.
Oh, definitely, he was a solid player. He was a solid player.
Yeah.
And those Michigan teams in college baseball, they had great teams back then. Never really broke through, but they had some killer lineups, and you're going to see that kind of throughout tonight. But yeah, he was a solid player. I had 3 or 4 players at first base along Casey. Let me see if I bring up my list here. Now it's loading slowly. See if I had anybody different. Yeah, I had Joey Votto, Perez, Morris, and Casey as well. I went with Joey Votto. That's who I went with as well.
I don't think you can argue with that. I mean, when you look at it across the board,
yeah,
he's definitely the best first baseman they've had.
Yeah, I will say this: being a Cubs fan, he hasn't been my favorite player over the years. But did you just take a sip of that new one, dude?
I did.
You got to let me know. All right.
I did. I said it was done.
You said you were ready. You didn't. I thought we were going to pause and make it a moment. All right. Mad Tree, rounding third. All right. Is Mad Tree the brewery?
Mad Tree is a brewery, yes.
All right. A red IPA. Here we go. Oh, yeah. I like red IPAs. I think I told you there was one in California that I used to drink at Rosati's that I liked. I haven't figured out what it was. Yeah, this is good. You don't see too many of these. This is really good.
No, right, you don't.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome, Scott. Thank you so much. Also, Scott also sent me this Rheingeist glass, too. I'm a Rheingeist dad. Cool.
There you go.
Hoppy. Did you try the holiday ale?
I did. I wasn't a big fan, to be honest.
Yeah. I think when we were talking earlier, a lot of the holiday beers I don't like. However, my favorite beer of all time is the Great Lakes Christmas Ale. It's my favorite beer of all time. I don't know what
you were saying that. I'll have to give it a try.
Yeah. Every year, all those Christmas ales are a little bit different. Careful, it's almost Easter. Don't drink with Scott. All right, so Chuck brought something up. I got to tell a little bit of the story. And Kevin was involved in this night too. So my wife, lovingly or not so lovingly, once a week reminds me about the year I ruined Easter. And I met Kevin and I went out in LA all the time. We were watching games, and we're 6 days apart. We kind of met each other watching Ohio State games and kind of just bonded, and we're kind of inseparable after that, and made every excuse we could to go drink together and hang out and watch sports and so forth. And Ohio State was playing in the NCAA tournament. I think the early game, the 11 o'clock game, and we met at a bar and invited Scott out, and that was like at 11 o'clock. One thing led to another. We stayed for the later games. Scott and I lived probably 25 minutes away from there. So on the way home, we stopped at another bar, and his girlfriend was there and his son was there. And I remember we playing darts. We were there for a while, but I remember getting my bill when we got to that bar, and we had been already out for like 6 hours. I remember having 9 arrogant bastards from Stone at that bar. So you can imagine what type of shape I was in at that time. Well, my wife and I, our family, used to go to Easter service on the beach in Malibu every year with our family out there, and I was in no condition. And it was not my finer moment. She made me go. She made me get up at 4:30 and threw me in the car and took the most windy canyon road she could do to get there on purpose. But yeah, the story of Daddy ruining Easter comes up at least once a week, but I have you to blame. So it's now your fault. Now that you're back in my life, I've put all the blame on you. So thanks, Chuck, for bringing that up. Don't want to say anything? You just want to leave that at that, Scott? No.
Yeah, you're blaming Kevin, right?
I'll always blame Kevin, but
Okay.
yeah, Kevin and I got in a little bit of trouble together. I'm not gonna lie.
Did we have a good time?
We did. It was a great time. Definitely, it was a fun time. I do remember I took a picture. I found it recently. Even in my condition, I got 3 bullseyes in one turn at that dartboard. I have a picture of the dartboard at that bar. So couldn't have been too bad. Anyway, all right. So let's move on to second base, because second base is no-brainer. Nobody else has anything else in this. Let me go here. There's no way you have anybody other than Joe Morgan, correct?
Well, I did go Joe Morgan.
You were going to go Brandon Phillips, weren't you?
I'm a big Brandon Phillips fan. Brandon Phillips was just an amazing defensive second baseman and had a great bat as well. And, for a few years there, he was a lot of fun to watch.
Another ex-Indian, yeah. I think he came over in the same trade that Sean Casey did.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He was an Indian for a little bit, but yeah, Brandon Phillips is a good player. But again, that's your heart talking, because Joe Morgan, Joe Morgan's Joe Morgan.
Well, when I look back at the numbers and the career, obviously I couldn't not put Joe Morgan in there. I love Joe Morgan too. Yeah. Brandon Phillips was always just a joy to watch. He just made some amazing plays out there.
He did. I just remember Joe Morgan, or like this way, pumping his arm and his his batting stance. Yeah. I liked him as an announcer too. I know a lot of people didn't like him, but I loved him as an announcer. I thought he was great until towards the end. I think he had some more controversial stuff and more controversial takes, but I enjoyed him. I thought he was good for people who didn't know the game well. I thought he did a really good job of translating what was happening in the game for kind of the average fan. So,
yeah, I agree. I always liked him as an announcer as well.
Yeah. All right. So I'm trying to think what order. I don't necessarily want to go in order, but we will. We'll go for now. Again, you had mentioned third base was one of those spots that was a little more difficult, and I agree. That's one of the spots that, again, I had some flexibility with the DH, and that's how I took it. But what did you go with it as third baseman, the greatest Reds third baseman of all time?
I ended up going Pete Rose.
You want to elaborate? I know we're going to talk about Pete Rose, but
I don't know that anybody there like really stood out to me as much better than the other. And probably more just on the name Pete Rose than anything. I personally love Chris Sabo.
Mm-hmm.
I love Todd Frazier when he was there.
Yep.
What's that?
Another Michigan guy, yeah.
Yeah, I love Todd Frazier for the few years he was there, and I even like Eugenio Suarez. It's playing third base for us now, but I had to go. I had to go with Pete Rose. Anything before the 70s, like I said, I don't really know enough about those guys.
There really wasn't
kind of went with.
There really wasn't anybody before that. I mean,
yeah, like I said, I don't even think when I look at those guys I just mentioned, I don't see any one of them being that much stronger than the other.
No,
overall.
I agree. I think that was all the people I had to. I have to say, I think Suarez could end up being the best of them bunch, and I wanted to put him there. I really did. Not enough time in yet because he's a spectacular player. Chances are he's not going to stay in Cincinnati, so I couldn't put him in there yet when you had the likes of Pete Rose and Tony Perez and other people there. So Annetta my wife just commented on the Easter thing. I don't even know. She said she solely blames me for this.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So no, I say I didn't ruin it. Nobody can really ruin it. See? All right. Whatever. I don't even know what they're saying. I'm just going to put them on. I'm not going to read them. This is one of those things that, the Rose was in the mix. I don't even remember who else I had at third base. I had Suarez. People that I liked. I did have Sabo, I mentioned. Aaron Boone. I liked Aaron Boone.
Yeah, he's another one.
Scott Rowland. There was for 3-4 years.
The only thing was the thing with Scott Rowland is he was actually there for quite a few years, but he was there at the end of his career.
Right.
He to me, I think of him as a Philly more than a Red.
Oh, without question, he's a Philly.
Yeah.
He's not going to make the Phillies best third baseman of all time.
Right, of course.
He'd probably be second, and any other team he might be first. But not in the Phillies with Mike Schmidt there. But I ended up going with Perez. Tony Perez.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, he came up as a third baseman, and he played third base.
No, I know. I thought about that too, but I always I more remember him as the first baseman.
Yeah. Again, the DH gave me flexibility. If we wouldn't have had the DH, I don't know if Votto would have been at first base. I probably could have put Perez there. I probably would have put Perez there, even though it would have been close. But I probably, again, growing up watching those Big Red Machine teams, I probably would have gone with Perez. I think they're very similar careers, Perez and Votto. They're both borderline Hall of Famers. I think Joey gets in at some point because things have been watered down. No offense to Joey and his career. It just, things have been, a little watered down in the Hall as of late. But, I went with Tony Perez only because it gave me flexibility.
Well,
Perez would have been in here somewhere, but
I don't. In my opinion, Votto is one of the greatest Reds ever. Mm-hmm. He is solid across the board. He's still. I mean, if you saw what he did last season, late into his career, he's still knocking it out.
Yeah, he definitely had a bounce back year. We had talked about this in one of our earlier conversations that, he had a really crappy year before, but with everything else going on, COVID and everything else, that year was pretty wash for him. But last year he had a solid year. He had a solid year.
I mean, his numbers as far as walks and base hits and home runs and on base percentage is incredible. I mean, he ranks way up there with those numbers.
Yeah, there's just been always something about him as an opposing team. It's like it's just that I've grown to like it because again, he's one of those guys that if he's on my team, I'd love him, right?
Yeah.
But if he's on somebody else's team, it's just guy I think he takes pride in other people not liking other teams not like him because he's kind of ornery, He wears his emotions on the sleeve and So, but yeah, again, the DH gave me flexibility to put Votto there and maybe I would have gone with him, but I had to get Tony Perez in here somehow. So this allowed me to do that. So, all right. So you had mentioned shortstop was one of those hard ones. And I know everybody, loves, and he's a borderline Hall of Famer. You have to go Barry Larkin. When you compare the careers of Barry Larkin and Davey Concepcion, there's no comparison. It's just we
Right.
reminisce about those old great teams, and he was such a cog pin in those teams. He's one of those people that made those teams go and was an integral part of that. But between the two, there's no comparison.
I no question, Barry Larkin is my choice. I do remember Davey Concepcion being a good, solid defender. He was also a good, solid hitter. Like you said, he kind of was one of those guys that was a big part of that whole machine that kept it going. So it's hard not to put him in there, but certainly Barry Larkin deserves to be there.
Did you give much consideration to Concepcion? I know you love Larkin, so did you give Davey much consideration, or was this kind of cursory?
Yeah, it was Larkin. It was never a question from the start.
All right. We're gonna go to left field again. I guess I'll let you go first because I don't think there's any way there's anybody else other than what I have. But I've been wrong before. What about left field? Best left fielder in Reds history?
George Foster.
Yeah, there's only one person it could be. Of course, Kevin Trigg may have somebody completely dumb and stupid and him being wrong, but it has to be George Foster. Has to be George.
The only other guy that I even considered, and it's not even close, really, was Adam Dunn.
Yeah. He came up in my thing too, but there's just no way. I didn't even put anybody else on my list. I thought of it for 2 seconds and no.
There were two positions that I had only two people on, and this was one of them.
I had only one. This is the only one I had one on. Everywhere else I have 2 or 3 or more.
Yeah, the only other one I had 2 on was second base. I had Joe Morgan and Brandon Phillips, and that was it.
Yeah. George Foster, he's a little dude too, and the only reason they were able to kind of get him in the lineup was because you have Pete Rose at third base. He had moved to third base that year so they can get Foster in the lineup. Because otherwise Rose was going to be playing left field. So because Rose had the flexibility of playing lots of position, which he showed from pretty much that point in his career on, George Foster got in the lineup. Because if it wasn't for Pete's willingness to do that, George Foster might not ever got in. So,
yeah, that's correct. Yep.
And I remember when I was a little kid, again, not just loving baseball cards and stuff. That's when George Foster was just raking home runs. I remember I would leaf through my pack to see if I got George Foster and Hank Aaron. Those are the 2 cards I was leafing through because the Indians and Cubs sucked at the time.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he hit 56 home runs one year. And,
I do not believe that is correct, but I'm going to find out right now, Scott. I'm going to find out right now because I don't think he had that many. How many home runs do you think Hank Aaron had in one season? The most he ever had in one season?
I'm going to say it was in the 40s.
I don't know if he ever broke 40. I don't think Hank Aaron ever broke 40 home runs. George Foster, there he is. Let's see. Home runs. 52. He had 52 that one year in 77.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're close.
40
another year, but other than that, his highest other than that was 30. So
yeah, he had that one really stellar year, and then he had some other good solid years.
Yep. No, he had in 77, 78, and 79, 52 home runs, 40 and 30. But he had 149 RBIs. These 3 years he had 121, 149, 120 RBIs in 3 years. Pretty solid.
Yeah, it's interesting because he actually came on strong after they had won the World Series.
Right. I know. Yeah, look at those years. I don't remember him late in his career, but I mean, he was with the Reds, and still, even those years after that, he had 98 RBIs, 93, 90, 70, 90, 86. 90. I don't remember him with the Mets. I don't. Because he went to the Mets for 5 years after that. I don't remember. But he had some solid years with the Mets, too. I mean, he had some solid years with the Mets. I don't remember that at all.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, well, I saw that. Don't remember it all. All right. Center field. This is one of the ones that I struggled with a little bit. Who did you have for center field?
Well, I might have gone with my heart a little bit on this one. I love Eric Davis. He was a big part of that 90s World Series team. I loved watching him. He was a 30 home run, 30 stolen base guy. Had a great arm. He gave you everything.
So is that who
but
you
I
went
also
with?
That's who I went with. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. He was one of my favorite non-Cub Indians player, especially at that time. I loved watching him. That's why I loved the Reds winning the World Series that year. I remember I was I think I told you this before. I remember I was at Michigan State with some friends, road tripping down to Michigan State. My buddy Frank and some other people, and watching the Reds in the bars we were at and drinking Shark Bowls, which was a ridiculous drink when you drink out of a straw and 5 people drinking out of this big bowl. But yeah, Eric Davis is a fun player to watch.
Yeah.
I don't think he, lived up to his potential. He didn't have the most consistent career. He went to the Dodgers after that, but he was fun to play. He had the quickest wrist and quickest bat I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, his wrists were
and I think what kind of derailed him was he had quite a few injuries from like 90 on.
Yeah.
Because even in the 90 World Series, he led off the first game with a home run, which kind of set the tone for that series.
Yep.
And then he got injured at some point. I can't remember which game it was, but it seemed like after that, the seasons after that, he just was dealing with one injury after another.
How long was it before that he went to the Dodgers? Because I think he went to the Dodgers right after that, but I don't remember how long he was with the Reds.
I think it was a couple years. They actually that was when they reunited Darryl Strawberry and Eric Davis together in L.A.
I totally forgot that Strawberry played for the Dodgers.
Yeah, they went the same year.
And I think, if I remember, Strawberry was only that half year, right? I don't think he stayed the following year.
I don't remember I don't remember that. I just know that they were both from LA. They were friends from LA, so it was kind of like this big thing.
Yeah, I remember. I always have followed minor league baseball, especially back in the day when there wasn't a lot of information. I remember following Darryl Strawberry and loving him, and so that '86 Mets team was one of the teams I liked a lot. That wasn't one of my teams, and that's why I'm excited to do the Mets episode with my buddy Andy. But yeah, that '86 Mets team with Doc Gooden, that was a team. That was a team.
Yeah, that was a fun team to watch. I was really glad when they won that series too.
Yeah. Thanks for Billy Buckner.
Mm-hmm.
I hated the Red Sox. I appreciate them now a little bit more, but I hated the Red Sox. And so seeing that ball, and I like Billy Buck because he was a Cub for a long time. So I hated to see that happen to him. I really did. But
yeah,
that was, to me, that was the curse of Babe Ruth. That was the curse of Babe Ruth on that play right there. Because it seems like to me like Babe Ruth was up above and just lifted up Buckner for just like a split second. It's like, they sold Babe Ruth.
And the funny thing about Buckner is I remember going to Dodger Stadium, all the time for games when I was young, and he was on the Dodgers at the time.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
So I remembered him real well from then.
Yeah, that was I'll never forget that play. Seeing Ray Knight round the field and win that game was crazy. Anyway, I do not have. Say it again.
By the way, Ray Knight, ex-Red third baseman too.
Yes. I didn't think of that, but he was on the Reds for a long time, and he was a solid player. He was an all-star.
Yep.
And he did not come up in any of my research.
You know what? I agree. Same thing here. I when you said that, I thought, wow, Ray Knight. I don't remember ever seeing him come up.
I am going to look, because I know he went to the Mets. How long was he on the Reds for? I don't even know.
I don't know, but he was there for a few years.
Yeah, because I thought he came up as a Red. Let me see. I'm looking up Baseball Reference as we play now. He had a 14-year career, and he was with the Reds quite a few years. He came up with the Reds, so he was with the Reds for 7 years.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, mostly defensive, not a lot of offensive numbers. And he had 79, 78 RBIs. And back then, in 80-81, that's a good total. That's like having 100 now. So, yeah. Yeah, but I'm surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't come up.
I always remember him as being a very solid player while he was there.
Do you remember who he was married to?
I don't, but if you tell me, I probably will.
The LPGA golfer Nancy Lopez. If you remember her.
Yep. That's right. I do remember that.
All right, this is a lot of time spent on center field. I have a feeling we're going to spend more on it because I do not have Eric Davis, even though he's one of my favorite players. I had to go with Veda Pinson.
That was the next. That was a hard one for me, but I don't know Veda Pinson that well, so I went with like I said, I went with my heart on that one with Davis. But Veda is second on my list.
Yeah. I mean, just statistically, Eric just didn't have the overall numbers.
Right.
Chuck remembers Nancy Lopez. Veda's career, he had a solid career. He's not a Hall of Fame career by any means, but he had a long, solid career. I think he's one of those players that gets overlooked a lot because he was playing with those great red teams, like towards the end of his career. But he was great because then what Geronimo took over for? Wasn't Geronimo the center fielder for those big red machine teams?
Yep.
And Pinson was obviously before that, but his numbers were good. I mean, I couldn't not go with him. Davis just didn't have the staying power and the longevity, and again the injuries and everything else. But to be honest with you, I didn't look that closely at Davis's stats, which I'm going to do now.
I think, and maybe you can check on this too, but did Geronimo come over
from the Astros? From the Astros.
Yes, that's what I thought.
He came over with Joe Morgan, I believe.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because Joe was.
They scored 45. On that deal.
Joe was an original Colt 45. So.
Yep.
That Astro, if you remember, anybody knows about Astros history. They were originally the Houston Colt 45s, and the Astrodome was new. It was brand new for the Colt 45s, and they tried to grow grass in the Astrodome. So it was a complete disaster. There's documentaries on it. Go watch it because the field was just all brown and dirt, and then they finally put AstroTurf in. But I think Joe Morgan actually went back there too, didn't he? That's where he went back to Houston right after he left Houston, I believe.
I do believe that. And so I have a quick question for you, Jay.
Yeah.
Did the term AstroTurf become what it was because of that?
No, that was in the 80s. It might have been the first one because then you had Kansas City, you had Minnesota when that dome opened. That's a good question. A lot of stadiums went to Cincinnati, or St. Louis had one. Cincinnati had AstroTurf. A lot of teams went to that. I'd like to know how many careers that stuff ruined. But the ball was also so fast on that thing. So I give infielders a little bit more nod playing defense on AstroTurf because the ball was just much faster. It got to you quicker. They were truer hops for sure, so you can gauge it, but it was much faster. But also for the same reason, there was a lot more hits, i.e. Pete Rose. But we'll get there. So Eric Davis for the Reds played 8 years with the Reds. 182 home runs. He had the one really good year. Well, he had 27, 37, 26, 34, 24, 100 RBIs, 93, 101. Yeah, maybe a little better career than maybe I thought. But then he went downhill, 30 and 32. That's when he went to the Dodgers, had 68, and his career was pretty much over. It did say he went back to Cincinnati for a year.
Yeah, he did. And I'm thinking, and maybe I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, was he the first guy to hit 30 home runs and steal 30 bases?
I don't think he was the first one. What year was that? It was, it would have been, I'm looking at this, it would have been 1987. And he stole 50 bases that year. It's a good question.
I think he might have been.
Could have been. Because Canseco was after that. Because Canseco did it in 88 or 89. It very well could have been. Yeah, could have been. All right, this is taking us forever. This is what you do when you give me beer, Scott. All right, right field. Okay, I can't wait to hear what you do this, but there's only one.
There's a no-brainer. No-brainer there too. It's Frank Robinson.
No-brainer. We will talk about Frank Robinson later, so we're gonna leave that there. That's a no-brainer. So for the outfield, Kevin had mentioned outfield, but so I can't wait to hear what his take is on this because George Foster, there's no other person you're gonna put in left field. There's no other person you're gonna put in right field. So there's two people you could put in center field, and so you can see that. But so I don't see that as that difficult. The next one's also a no-brainer. There's no way that you have anybody other than Johnny Bench.
Yep.
Johnny Bench.
Johnny Bench, probably the greatest Red ever.
Well, we're gonna find out, Scott. We're gonna find out. You're doing a little foreshadowing there. You're giving shit away.
That's right. We gotta speed this up, Jay.
We'll get there. Let's go with the DH because obviously you know who I went with DH, but I want to know who you went with DH.
Well, like I mentioned to you earlier, you kind of threw that curveball at me at the last minute. I didn't know we were going to do a DH, but that's a good question.
Next guy up. You mentioned Al Morris. We didn't mention what's his name, Paul O'Neill.
Paul O'Neill. When you mentioned it to me earlier, Paul O'Neill was one of the first people that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's a good one. I think of Tony Perez because I didn't put him in the starting lineup.
Oh.
There's a couple other guys. Jay Bruce I liked a lot. Todd Frazier, Chris Sabo. But I would say probably Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill is a good choice.
So you're going with your all-time Reds lineup without Tony Perez in it, and I gave you a DH.
Yeah, Tony Perez could have been at first. He could have been at third. He could have been the DH. So, tough to leave him out. But I didn't want to go entire Big Red machine.
He's the only reason that I let the DH stay. Because I had, again, more flexibility. There was no way I could not put Tony Perez in this lineup. There's just no way.
Yeah, it was hard for me because I always loved Tony Perez, and 24 has always been my favorite number, and he was number 24. So it was a tough one. What can I say?
Yeah, one of the episodes we're going to do is numbers, and we'll actually do several episodes, ticking a number and saying who are the best players in all the sports that wore that number. So 24 is an interesting one. So sure. Perez will probably be in that conversation, but for me, there's only one 24. I think there's another person I'm going to mention later who I think is the most underrated or underappreciated major leaguer of all time, but the other one is Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson is one of the best players I've ever seen. Most people have him ranked really high, but everything he did, he was also number 24. So I think for me, Rickey Henderson would be the greatest number 24 of all time. I haven't thought about it, but to me, Rickey Henderson, I think, is one of the greatest players of all time. So,
solid across the board.
Yeah, I had Pete Rose, obviously. Oh, where'd I go here? Where's my stuff? Oh, I didn't do it. All right, so I have Pete Rose.
I thought you were going to go with Rose.
Yeah, there's no way I'm leaving him out of the lineup. I know we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but you're not leaving Pete Rose out of the lineup. There's just no way. All right, so again, I was telling Scott and talking to Kevin about this earlier, and I can't wait till I do all major league teams and look back on this. And I think of baseball tradition. I think about the Yankees. I think about the Cardinals. I think about the Red Sox. I think about the Reds. I think about the Dodgers. Maybe throw the Giants in there because of recent stuff and in the past, but maybe and that's it. Then there's a big drop off. I wouldn't be surprised when I get all said and done with all the major league teams that the Reds don't have the worst history of pitching of all of them. This was horrendous. I mean, you have a lot of no hitters. Like you have one of the top 5 number of no hitters and some perfect games in there. Yep. You have John D. Vandermeer, who's back to back. The only person throwing back to back no hitters. But your history in pitching is horrible.
Yeah, when you mentioned that to me, I said the same thing. I said, I didn't even have to look at that. When I thought about pitchers, I couldn't even think of any really, other than a couple. But there's nobody that's stands out like a lot of the other great teams.
I mean, who came into your mind when it first came up?
Well, Vandermeer because of what he did.
Yeah.
But also for me, for players that I grew up watching, I mean, do you want to? My starting pitcher on this lineup is Jose Rio.
Sorry, I was opening that stout. I also have Jose Rio. That's who I have as well.
And he didn't have a stellar career. He was just good for a few years.
Yeah, but he always had injuries. He always had great stuff, but he was always injured.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, he came over from the A's, and he never really lived up to his hype. And then when he came to the Reds, he actually had a few really good years, including he won the World Series MVP in 1990.
Yep. Yeah, I went on potential with this. I mean, again, I'd seen him, with the A's, and then he kind of came into his own. When did he die?
I don't know, but the interesting thing about Jose Rio is that he actually retired and then came back.
Yeah.
And actually had a couple good years after coming back from retirement.
Was he a reliever?
I
do remember that because his arm was destroyed. His arm was destroyed, and he came back. And I'm looking at.
I don't know if he came back as a reliever, but he may have finished up as a reliever.
Yeah, he left in '95, and he came back in 2001.
Yeah, there's a few years in between.
Yeah. And he didn't have a lot of time. 2 years and not a whole lot of innings in that time. But yeah, his I thought didn't he die?
I don't know. That's why when you asked that, I wasn't sure.
I thought he died, but it's not showing up on here. I could have sworn he passed away. I'll have to ask Kevin. I could have sworn to that.
He pitched 2 very strong games in the '90 World Series.
Most definitely.
He also was he the nephew of Juan Marichal?
Yes, he was the nephew of Juan Marichal.
Right. Okay.
So speaking of that, I was just looking at this. I thought of another show idea, is having episodes based on countries, like doing the best Dominican Republic players of all time, best Puerto Rican players of all time. That'd be a fun episode to do. I'm gonna do that. Those are going on the list.
You'd have a lot of good options there for
sure. The Dominican would definitely be the hardest for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Growing up and watching baseball and seeing how the international players have kind of taken over, especially in the last many years with the Asian players. But and seeing the massive failure on Major League Baseball to not invest in the inner cities. It's like there's so few African American players in the major leagues now. I don't even know what percentage is. It's tiny. It's like 5%. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And how the Major League Baseball has missed the opportunity to invest in this game in the inner cities, because it's an inexpensive game to play, like basketball. It's not hockey and stuff like that. In golf and stuff, they've just missed the boat. And I hate to see that happen.
No, I agree. I think you combine that with the fact that in general, the NBA and the NFL have been so, to most people, it's much more exciting to watch the NFL and the NBA. Yep. So I don't think that, growing up, kids are as likely to want to play baseball as either of those other 2 sports anymore.
Our attention spans are too short for that. I still would rather watch baseball than the other ones by far, especially I love college basketball. I love watching college basketball. Is probably my favorite. The NCAA tournament is like the greatest event in the world, but NBA basketball, it sucks. I can't. Other than the Cavs playoff games when they won, I haven't watched the NBA game in 30, 40 years. It's a boring game to watch. Anyway, going off on a tangent there.
Well, I will say this. I love going to baseball games live. Yeah, I still think I think it's a great day to, it's a great day of enjoyment.
One of the things I like too, and I think I told you about this, being in Chicago and living right downtown Chicago, I forgot the actual number, but I've been to over 500 Cubs games. I remember in '98, God, that year was great. I went to 42 games in 98 alone. I was there at Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game. There's another story there about me being on TV and making a complete ass on myself that game. But I was at Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game again because I loved minor league baseball and I would follow minor league. So I knew Kerry Wood really well at the time. It was, I think, his third or fourth start. And my buddy and I, Frank and I went, and it was magical. But I also, that whole playoff or the home run stretch was just, it was, it saved baseball, but being in Chicago and what Sammy was doing and the energy and excitement around all that was just contagious. And I was at Sammy's. I told my wife when Sammy got 60, I'm going every single day. I'm going every day, no matter what. I don't care what's going on. I'm going every day. McGuire hit 60 or 59 and 60 the night before, I think on a Friday, or no, it was a Saturday because it was Sunday. McGuire hit him on Saturday. He got 60 on Saturday. Sammy had 58. I went to the Sunday game. He hit 58 or 59 and 60 the game I was at. It was just, it was nice. Awesome. It was awesome. But one thing I like about going to baseball games too is because it's not so fast, you can socialize more. You can talk more if you're going with people. Like with basketball and football, you have to pay attention a lot more and, things like that. And football now is like the commercials. There's so many commercials. There's so much standing around. I know it's
well, and the other, I'm a big football fan. I actually prefer watching football on TV.
Oh, without question.
You get a better view of the whole field, the whole scene. It's depending on where you're sitting. It's sometimes it's really not that great of a view.
Bigger stadiums. And when's the last time you were at a game, football game?
Oh, probably about 5 years ago.
All right, so somewhat recently. Actually, the last game, one of the last games I was at some Bears games, but I was at the Dolphins-Browns Monday night game years ago. But there's so much standing around because you're waiting for the commercials. So when you're there at the game, they're standing on the field in the huddle just like talking and shooting the shit. It's like it's unwatchable when you're there. It's just unwatchable. So anyway, Chuck agrees with us.
Yeah, no, I agree. Baseball is a great sport to go to live with some buddies or a family because you can kind of really enjoy being together in the day without focusing on every single second of the game.
Yep. All right, Scott, I'm going to try this oatmeal stout, and then we're going to finally end this segment because that was the longest lineup segment for the easiest lineup we've done so far. So this is the Black is Beautiful oatmeal stout from Geinheist. Holy crap. Ooh. It's really strong too. Oh, you can taste it. Oh, yeah, that's really good. It's a little tiny, like, thing. It's like not the regular size of a bottle, so it's like.
You got to drink it slow.
I am, but it's like, wow.
That is with really that 14%, they want you to drink it slow, Jay.
Yeah. I will try to do that. All right. This is a tough one. It could be to me. It's probably one person. I probably know who you have. I went a different route for a different reason, but go ahead and tell me who you had for best reliever.
Well, I actually went with the Nasty Boys.
Oh, like the whole group.
The whole group, because that year that they won the World Series, that was one of the best parts of watching that team. Was every game one of those guys would come in and do the 6th, 7th, 8th inning, and then another one would come in and end the game in the 9th, and it was just that's one of my best memories ever of the Reds.
Yeah, I get that. That's a good call. I haven't seen anybody do that, but especially with relief pitchers, that's a good call. I hated the Nasty Boys. I hated Rob Dibble. I actually liked him on the Dan Patrick show, and him and Dan Patrick did the radio show. But I remember when Rob Dibble threw it, Doug DeCenzo threw the ball at Doug DeCenzo, the Cub. He's like
Yeah. I don't think you're alone in hating the Nasty Boys. I think they were hated by a lot of other teams. Yeah.
Remember when Charleston took out? Who was the catcher he took out?
Oh yeah, that was. That's another one of my favorite all-time Red plays. He was it Mike Scioscia?
Yes, it was Scioscia. That's right. Yeah. I see he comes up on YouTube all the time.
Yeah, that was awesome. I if I had to go a single relief pitcher, it would have been Chapman.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going. But that's a good call. I can respect that. I can respect Nasty Boys. I did not go Chapman. That was probably the obvious choice, and I have the connection with the Cubs with him. I went surprise. Actually, statistically, he's the best reliever you have.
I tell you what. Let me guess.
Yeah, if I can find it. Hold on, let me find it first. I can't find my.
Okay.
Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. All right. Go ahead. Who do you guess?
Is it John Franco?
I totally forgot about John Franco. That would have been a good call.
Yeah. He was on my list.
He never even came up in my research.
Danny Graves?
Danny Graves. I went Danny Graves.
Yeah.
My
list was the Nasty Boys, Chapman, Graves, and Franco.
Franco didn't even come up. How long was he on the Reds?
He was there for a few years. They actually traded him away, or I think they traded him, and then what's his name?
Is that when he went to the Mets, or did he come there from the Mets?
No, he went to the Mets.
To the Mets? Let's see.
Yeah, and the Nasty Boys kind of came in, and can't think of the one Nasty Boy's name. It was Dibble Charlton and Randy Myers.
Yeah, Randy Myers. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, he was on Cincinnati for, really 5 years. And then that long career with the Mets. He was on 12 years with the Mets or whatever. John Franco.
Yeah, he was really good with the Reds before he left. We also had Jeff Brantley.
Yep, Jeff Brantley too. Yeah, they've had a lot of really good, solid relievers. Not starters, but you could put a lot of relievers in there. I went with Graves because the Indians connection. He also came up in Indian, and we traded him.
Yeah.
He might have been in that same trade as Casey and Franco. Wouldn't surprise me if it was. But yeah, so I picked Danny Graves. Didn't have the greatest stuff, but he got it done. And I respect guys like that. Maddox, who's probably one of the best 3 pitchers of all time, arguably, didn't have overpowering stuff. He just knew how to work it. He knew how to pitch, So Danny Graves is like that. He didn't have good stuff at all, So, all right. We got to move on. We are finally going to bring in Kevin Trigg. So, Kevin, I will unmute you on this side. We're going to get Kevin Trigg's response to our lineup and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But I'm sorry it took so long. But welcome to the show, Kevin Trigg.
Let's go.
Hey, buddy. You want to say hi or just...
Hey, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're good. Sorry it took so long.
Didn't I just say it?
Yeah, you did. It was There's a little bit of delay.
No worries. It's fine. It was fun. Scott's a really smart. He's really smart. You, on the other hand, not so much.
Hey, Kevin, I want you to do me a favor. Are you on? I want you to actually disconnect and reconnect real quick because there's a big delay on your end. It'll fix the delay.
I don't even know how to do that.
Just re-click the link I sent you.
How do I do that?
Just re-click the link I sent you.
All right, hold on.
So I'll disconnect you, and then tell me when you see the link in your email. Yeah.
Hold on. I don't even know how to find my email. I've been drinking. Hold on.
You were talking about being smart, Kevin. What?
No, I didn't say anything about smartness. Okay, I got it. I found it.
All right, I'm going to disconnect you and then reconnect. Yeah, that delay was awful. This is pretty amazing. See, it only took 2 seconds. All right, there you go. All right.
Better?
Yes, now you were saying.
Oh, I said I've been drinking. I don't know how to do the internet.
You've been drinking Michelob Light, so shut up.
Michelob Ultra.
Michelob
It's a
Ultra.
superior
What
light
did I
beer.
say? What did I say?
Mick Light.
Mick Light. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make Mick Light anymore. That's what it is. Anyway.
Who Day, Chuck. Who Day.
Yeah, Chuck is Scott's brother. So welcome to the show, Kevin. Kevin and I know each other from our days in California. He was desperate for friends, and he was kind of hanging out in a bar by himself and being lonely. And me, being the loving guy that I am, invited him to sit over at my table. And then after that, it was just chaos for 5-6 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
It's all your
we find
fault,
out we're 6 days apart. Yes,
You're
I
much
am
older
older.
than I am.
Yes, I am older. But so welcome to the show. What did you think about our lineups?
Can you put them back up?
I can.
Because I thought so. I didn't. There were a couple I did not disagree with. First base is just awful.
So who do you have?
Base, yeah. Tony Perez. Come on now.
Well, again, you could put Perez at third base too. You could put him at DH too.
Yeah, but he was a first base guy. At least in my, when I was growing up, that's how I remember him. It's not that Votto's not good. He's also, the big red machine will always have.
Joey Votto's probably going in the Hall of Fame. You realize, right?
Yeah, right. Probably. We'll see. It's a weak Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, that like I said, but still. All right. So
right.
What else?
Morgan, yes, 100%. Third base, there should have been no other question than the greatest player of all time, Pete.
So first of all, hold that because it's ridiculously stupid. First of all, he only played third base for a short period of time. So to say that, you're already like, it's ridiculous. So
this is when you let Cleveland people discuss Cincinnati. Just like Sam White says, you don't live in Cleveland, you live in Cincinnati.
Okay. All right. See what I'm getting myself into.
So shortstop, yes, Barry Larkin. So the outfield I didn't do by position. I did more people.
Group. All right.
Right. So you just kind of, it's hard to pick a left fielder or a right fielder or a center fielder, I think.
Not in this case,
so
but go ahead.
It is. Robinson for sure would be in there.
Yep.
I would put Ken Griffey in there.
What?
Yeah, because
Ken Griffey should not be on this list. He was injury riddled when he went to Cincinnati. His numbers in Cincinnati don't warrant it at all.
He produced Ken Griffey Jr.
Ken Griffey Sr., yeah. Are you saying senior?
No, yes, senior.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. No, I agree.
No, not junior.
Griffey's
senior,
in that mix.
senior.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant junior. No, Griffey's in that mix.
Mm-hmm. So
Griffey's
Frank and Griffey for sure. I liked Eric Davis. I liked Paul O'Neill. I like those guys. I don't know. Not Dan Dreesen, probably. Who else would I pick? Probably I'd put Davis in there. I'm not too pissed off about Eric Davis. I think it's a good pick. He's in the mix, right? Pinson is, I think he played in the 1320s for the Emperor of Rome.
Statistically, he's by far the best center fielder they've ever had, but
Yeah. Right fielder, like I said, Robinson. So that catcher is bench, but this was close because a close second was a man by the name of Randy Poso, a.k.a. Oh, yeah, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Did you even know the Macho Man played catcher for the Reds minor league system?
I did not.
How you even have anybody close to Johnny Bench is ridiculous.
He doesn't close. That was a joke. But the best part about it is I remember watching a game, and Eric Davis was a center fielder. And so the Macho Man came to the booth with Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall, and they were standing up there. And so the Macho Man was a catcher in like the low minors, and he played with Davis. And he comes up in the booth, and everybody kind of on the field kind of remembers he's there. Like they're looking up and like, that's Randy, because all those guys played with him at that time in the minors.
Yeah.
He went on to become a wrestler and all that.
Yeah.
So they all come to the mound. There's like the weirdest thing. All the players come to the mound that played with him, and they start pointing up at him as he's talking to Joe Nuxall and Marty Brenneman. The Macho Man's like, oh, yeah, Eric Davis. And he started talking about catching for the Reds minor league system and playing with Davis. And then Marge Schott threatened to fire both Nuxall and Brenneman if they didn't get him out of the booth.
I've never heard that story. That's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, Johnny Bench. Starting pitcher, I did not have Jose Rijo. I went with a few people you'll disagree with.
Mario Soto.
First of all, Noodles Hahn is probably the greatest Reds pitcher of all time. Played in 1899. But Tom Seaver and Tom Browning.
Yeah, Tom Browning was definitely probably second on my list. He was a solid pitcher for the Reds for a number of years.
He was.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that blew out his arm too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. He was a no-hitter. He threw a no-hitter. I think he'll do a perfect game.
Seems like everybody in the Reds had a no-hitter. He had a perfect game, yeah.
He had a perfect game.
Didn't he blow out his arm? Didn't his arm snap?
I don't remember.
Oh yeah,
I was
think
probably drinking
when he
them.
came back from an injury, or something like his arm snapped, kind of like Dan Drybeck or whatever his name from the Giants did. His arm like snapped.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. But yeah, Browning was
Yeah.
definitely in the mix. Mario
Right.
Soto we didn't mention.
Yeah, him too. He was the other one that I was going to say.
I would think Mario Soto probably it should have been Mario Soto other than Rio for me. I think he probably had the best career. But again, pitching was,
Correct.
Yeah, but again, all those no hitters in perfect games. But and relief pitcher.
So I had Tom Hume, and then I forgot about Franco, but yes, he would be there. But Tom Hume for me.
Yeah. Now, did you go
And then
Hume because of his career or what he did after baseball?
Just his career. He was like, I remember watching him back in the day, and he was just a great closer. He was a great pitcher. He always kind of settled things down. So he was my guy. And maybe it's just because he's the one that comes to mind the most.
Yeah, sure.
I never really picked a DH.
Yeah.
Foster's definitely in there, obviously.
Oh,
It's hard not to put him in there. It's hard not to put a lot of people in there. Paul O'Neill. Actually, remember when Jay Bruce went on a streak at the beginning when he first started? It's like if you pick Jay Bruce during that period of time, the Reds, that you can't pick anybody better for the.
He did the same thing when he went to the Indians. He went to the Indians, had this huge streak. It's like, holy crap, he's the greatest player known to man.
And I was
a good guy too. Jay Bruce is a good guy.
Yeah, and I went to one of the games when he was there, and it was like he ended on a home run, like he did, for like 27 games in a row or whatever it was that he did.
Chuck wants to ask you out on a date, Kevin.
I'm married, but I'm available too, Chuck. So, whatever you need.
We know how you swing, Kevin. So. This is holy crap, by the way. This is like.
It looks like it. This is American beer.
It is so good.
For $15 a bottle, it better be good.
Well, $15 for 15% or 14.
Flanagan's at Coconut Grove. You can get this on draft for $2.99. Just remember that.
You pay $2.99 for that beer? They don't give it to you?
Draft at Flanagan's Coconut Grove.
Hey, they're not going to give me money for the show. Don't put that shit on the team. But I'll listen to them. I'd love to have them on as a sponsor. The lineup again. I thought the lineup in general was fairly easy. Pitchers, I was surprised. I hadn't thought about the pitchers. I thought about all the great players. And the Reds, besides the great players we talked about, like we didn't even mention Mario Soto until just now.
And he was one of the ones I had. I guess I bet like 7 or 8 beers in, I forgot about it.
Yeah, Paul O'Neill, Hal Morris, you had mentioned earlier. They had a lot of really solid players. A lot of solid players. Davey Concepcion didn't make our list, but he's one of those. But I was surprised when I got to the pitching. I had no idea the pitching was that bleak. But again, I'll look at other teams when we get there and see what if it compares.
You forget about Tom Seaver.
Well, Tom Seaver wasn't there that long.
He was like there for like 7 years, I think.
I don't think he was there. I think he was there for like 5. And it was after the Mets.
But hey, get this. He didn't get a no-hitter until he came to the Reds.
Well, it seems like everybody for the Reds has no hitters.
The thing too I wanted to say about the pitching that's interesting is that if you have watched the Reds over the past 20 to 30 years, they have had very solid players off defensively, especially offensively during that time. They have had either very weak starting pitching or of late very weak relief pitching. And that is what has been their like Achilles heel for years now.
Yeah, I was shocked by that.
Well, their pitchers leave. What's Cueto, right? He was like this great pitcher that went to the Giants. They won't spend money. It's like the Bengals, right? Everybody's happy about the Bengals, and as I am, but Mike Brown's the cheapest owner in football, so he's never gonna pay the money he needs to pay. It's the same with the Reds. They don't want to pay to keep players.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is they've had some pretty good starting pitching rotations, for the last several years, but their relief pitching has been horrid. They have gone into so many games late in the innings, like 6th, 7th inning, with 4 or 5 run leads and lost game after game after game.
Yep.
They cannot get relief pitcher for their life.
Yeah. And when the ones they have, they give up. They trade him, at the deadline. They get rid of him.
Yeah.
What's his name? What's the Dodgers who's done so well? I can't think of his name at the top. But he's like a 1 inning guy, and he was a perfect guy. And they're just like, no, we don't want to pay you. Go to the Dodgers or go to the Yankees or go to the teams that are willing to pay. The Reds just won't pay anything.
Yeah, I think the small market teams, especially relievers, people that are just casual baseball fans don't realize, but the relievers make or break a team. When you can have a guy that can go, or a staff, you need the guys that go long when your starters don't last long. You need the guys that shut it down. You need the setup guys. You need the 1 inning guy or the 1 out guy. And teams are made or break by relievers. That's why they're making more and more money now. But these smaller market teams can't pay. In the past, they could. In the past, they could afford all those relievers, and now it's like.
See, I would argue differently in the sense that they can pay because their owners are billionaires too, right? I mean, it's just, do they want to pay? And Wayne Huizenga ruined baseball, but he also proved that you could take a shitty team and make it a World Series champion by buying players at the deadline instead of the Reds getting involved. They just sell off every single year.
Yeah.
And we had, and Trevor Bauer was a terrible example, but they had a stud as a pitcher. But then what did they do? They let him go to the Dodgers.
Yeah. Well, the Indians let him go to the Cubs, and the Diamondbacks let him go to the Indians. So I remember when the Indians got Trevor Bauer, the Diamondbacks let him go because he was such a hothead and was so attitudinal and everything else. So we'll see what happens.
And honestly,
this year.
Speaking of Trevor Bauer, that year he had with Cincinnati was one of the best pitching performances by a Reds starting pitcher ever.
Without question. It was the best.
Yeah.
It was
the
best.
Great. He's a great pitcher, but now, of course, I think part of his thing was, what's the stuff called? They were putting on the ball, they were loading the ball up, and the spin rate got crazy, and so they took that away, and then he became mediocre again.
Yeah, well.
And then he got arrested.
Yeah, well, he's been exonerated.
Oh, he didn't get arrested. He got
been
in trouble
exonerated
and
now.
got out. Yeah, exactly.
So, just real quick, Tom Seaver actually had a little bit better career than I thought with the Reds. It was only 5 years, 4.5. He was 61 and 43, which is significant, with a 3.3 ERA. In the National League at that time, that's not necessarily that great, but still, with the Reds pitching, probably good enough to warrant in the conversation, which we didn't bring up earlier. So,
because it's not like
Kevin
you're
Trigg.
Going with the Yankees and the Dodgers pitching. You're one of the Reds pitching.
Well, again, but I mean, there's other teams that have great pitching that either they got traded away or whatever. But and again, maybe I'll be wrong after I see all the pitching, but I can think of other teams that have good pitchers that you think of, and I couldn't even think.
No.
Anyway, all right. So, real quick, and this is going much longer than I thought. We're not even close. So, I didn't get your guys, Kevin or Scott's, and I want to get Kevin your first memories of being, being a Reds fan. And I guess Scott, you mentioned it with your grandparents, but, so let's ask Kevin here. So, your earliest memories of the Reds and being a Reds fan.
Just watching the Big Red Machine, right, in the 70s. And I remember going to games at Riverfront back then vividly. Or, sorry, not vividly, but like kind of, 54 years old. I don't really remember what I did yesterday, but I can kind of remember going to Riverfront and seeing those games. But for me, one of the things was I had this album. So when the Reds won the 2 World Series, they put out an album. And I would sit, and it was all the broadcasts of Marty Brennaman, the Reds winning the World Series, both of them, right? And I remember I would listen to that thing, and it skipped. It was like a giveaway at the Reds game. And it skipped, and it was terrible. But I would sit in my room for hours and listen to both sides of that record. Like the first side was 73, the second side was 75, or whatever. And I remember just listening to that over and over and over and over. I think one of the coolest memories I had was I went to Johnny Bench's last game that he caught. So there's I have a certificate somewhere of this is Johnny Bench's last game or whatever that he caught. He pinch hit for a little while, played a little first base or whatever. But yeah, those are 2 big ones. I remember dying in the heat of Riverfront Stadium.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was at that stadium several times. Were you ever at Crosley Field?
No, I am in my 50s.
Well, I know, but I mean, it was around for a while, even after they opened.
No, I never went.
Yeah, I was there once. I wish I could go back and go to Ebbets Field and all those other fields and that we hear about from the back in the day and compare them.
But
I
you
think
kind of can. I mean, you can go to, Wrigley or, Fenway or Dodger Stadium. Those
Yeah.
are all around back in those days.
Yep. And that's why those stadiums are still the greatest. The greatest.
Right. It's great.
Scott and I had
Have
talked.
you seen how many Dodgers games?
Yeah. Well, how many opening days we were at right away?
Yeah. Freezing.
Do you remember that one was so freaking hot? It was like, oh my gosh, we were roasting. And like, the one thing about the Dodger Stadium too is like, first of all, you remembered it was that opening day that it was so hot that we had to get out of the sun. But I love the Dodger Stadium had the big, huge Tecates and the Dos Equis that were dirt cheap.
$13.
Do you remember them running out of beer on opening day?
Yeah, they always do. Every single opening day the Dodgers screw up.
How do you run out of beer on opening day? Do you remember what they served us?
Which one? What was it? Was it that shite beer?
Yeah, the Height beer. Like Dodger Stadium ran out of beer on opening day, and we went and got beers, and this is the only thing we have left. And it's something called HITE. I wish I had the picture.
Korean. It's Korean.
Well, we didn't know. It's like, what is this? Yeah. And it was Korean beer, which ironically was still better than the Bud Light that Kevin drank. So crazy. But yeah, Dodger Stadium was fun. Those old stadiums are great. Scott and I talked about meeting in Chicago for a game. We should get Chuck and you to meet us there and go to Wrigley Field. Kevin and I have talked about doing that a lot of times and just never made it happen. But we should definitely make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And going to Cincinnati. I'd love to go down to Cincinnati again. And I have not been to the new stadium. So Kevin, what do you think of the new stadium?
I liked it, right? I was there when it was first built, and I still lived in Ohio at that time, and I remember going to the games, and it was great compared to those old stadiums in Riverfront and Three Rivers and
Wait, time out, Kevin. Riverfront Stadium was not a good stadium.
No. I'm saying compared to that stadium.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. The funny thing is it's now an old stadium, right? You think of stadiums today, and Riverfront was built how many years ago? 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still kind of cool. I like the way they did it. It might need updated a little compared to some of the, brand new stadiums that everybody's putting up these days.
When did that stadium open?
I like it a lot better than Riverfront. I'll put it that way.
Well, anything was better than Riverfront. Those stadiums, that whole era of stadiums was awful. Yeah. When did the Great American Ballpark open?
In I'm going to say 90s, early 2000s.
Was it really that early? I didn't think it was that.
So, right?
I didn't think it was that long ago. But
so I left Ohio in 2005. So it was before that. It'd been around several years before that.
I guess I didn't realize it was that old. Scott had mentioned on a previous conversation that it wasn't good, and other people I've talked to says that they don't like it. A lot of those new stadiums, people are saying that they don't like as much.
I think they get
surprising.
A little corporate.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing with them.
Yeah.
Actually, I just
go ahead.
No, I just looked it up. It opened in 2003.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's pretty cool. It's so now it's almost 20 years old already. It's not an old stadium, but it's back in the day, like Riverfront, they would let fall down before they ever replaced it.
That place was.
So I'm actually kind of curious because the first new stadium was Baltimore, right? It was Camden, and now that stadium's 25, almost 30 years old, and now, but it looks so iconic now. You don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah, it was Baltimore,
kind of
which is a really great stadium. The Jake in Cleveland again still holds time. And then there was those other ones after that came, like Comiskey was awful. They've redone it a million times. That stadium's awful. But I'm hearing a lot of the same things of these new stadiums just aren't the atmosphere. It's like it's almost generic or something, So
I went to a Phillies game once, and it was the most.
In the old stadium or the new one?
The new one, where they have the three stadiums together in the same parking lot, and it was just like, okay. I mean, the background's great because it's it's the cityscape, so you get to see the city. But it was just like so generic, and just everything was the same. Pittsburgh is great. Like I've never been to that stadium, but just watching it on TV, the view behind that stadium is wonderful. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, didn't Scott? You said you were there, didn't you? Or
I didn't watch a game there, but I went into the stadium. It's just where it's set at is just it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so we got to move on. We're again, there's not a ton of people watching, but the replay, I'll cut it up, and we'll still get a lot of people watching. I kind of knew this was going to happen. All right. So
You'll
we
cut
are going to
me
move
out.
on to, we haven't even had the debate yet. So we got to move on.
There's a debate. I didn't know.
Let's go.
I wanted to spend so much more time on this.
We got all night. It's a YouTube thing. It can go forever.
This is true. Scott, you don't have to work tonight, right?
No. That's why we switched it to tonight, Jay.
That's what we did on Thursday. So, all right. So
Because I knew this was going to happen.
I am going to preface, and I sprung this on them today, that we are going to do a segment on Pete Rose because of the response we got on social media and Kevin being an idiot on social media. I'm going to preface
You had
this.
like 30 likes or something.
I am going to, well, for us, it's good. There's TikTok and all those. You put them all combined. For us, it was by far the best. So I'm going to preface this, and Kevin and I have had this conversation before. I think it's absolutely 100% ridiculous that Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame. However, I'm going to say in a little bit that his numbers don't warrant him being in the Hall of Fame, but I think it's ridiculous that he's not in the Hall of Fame. I know there's thing, and I grew up loving the guy. I liked it. I liked the way he played. I loved the hustle. You know, he was a ball player. You know, that's how I grew up, playing that hard and getting dirty, and that was the type of ball player I was. So I like Pete Rose. Everything I say after that, keep that in mind. Because I've dived more and more deeper into this since you and I had that conversation and looked at other people's take on this, and it's all over the board. Some people think he's the greatest Red of all time, which is absolutely freaking insane. That's not even, it's not even relatively close, but there's other people who don't think he even belongs in the Hall of Fame. I'm leaning more towards that now. So I want to get your guys' opinion. See, Kevin's rolling his eyes. I hope you came prepared, Kevin, because I have all this stuff to back it up. Let's start with Scott, because he's going to be the calm one, as he always is, the more reserved one. I want to know your opinions about Pete Rose, growing up as a Reds fan, and again, the banning of Pete Rose, and kind of your overall take now as a 96-year-old.
Thanks. I don't know the stats probably as well as you, Jay, but I would say what he meant to Cincinnati. I think the whole hustle bit, like you mentioned, he just gave it all out there for.
Where's your beer named after him? Where's your beer?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. With one word, hustle.
Yep.
I don't know that stats wise he's a candidate for the Hall of Fame, but I certainly think that the fact that he's still to this day the hit king of all time, and he played the way he played. I don't know how you don't put him in there, and I don't know how you don't consider him as one of the greatest Reds of all time. Okay,
so I will comment on that, then I'm gonna let Kevin speak. So I'm not saying he's not one of the greatest Reds of all time. He's a top 10 Red. So he's all right. So he's maybe a top 5 Red, without question. And I do think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, I'm going to let Kevin talk because he's going to spew some bullshit. I'll have a lot more.
There's no bullshit to be spewed.
Go ahead.
There's one number that matters. There's one number. No matter what numbers you come up with.
Okay, so
4,
that number then. Let's
2,
talk.
5, 6.
Let's talk about
That's
that
it.
number. Let's talk about that number. The fact that he held on for 6 extra years just to break that is his only reason to stay in the league for 6 extra years. And in those 6 years, he wasn't even equivalent to a AA player during those times. He was the reason he had to stay so long.
Thing.
What?
Cal Ripken Jr. did the same thing.
No, you're out of your mind. He was an all-star those last years that he broke those records. You're out of your mind. He hit 305.
He was like 127 years old back then.
He was much more productive than Pete Rose was. It's not even relatively close. That's a ridiculous argument. You can go look that up. That's not even close. Pete Rose, those last 6 years that he does this to me. He knows. He's laughing because he knows it gets me worked up. So those last 6 years that Pete Rose hung around solely for that record, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't do the same thing. I think that record is never going to be broken. It was amazing. I think Ichiro could have broken it. I don't think it's ever going to be approached again. And I think that number alone should get him in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. But he stuck around for 6 extra years, including being a player manager. Those 6 years he played, he was a below a major league player. You look, the numbers warrant it. He didn't deserve to be in the major leagues those 6 years, other than his name. So yes, that number, in my opinion, has always kind of been. But again, I thought he deserved the Hall of Fame, and he probably still does. I'm not saying he doesn't, but if you take the longevity records out, the runs, the at bats, the hits, obviously. You take the numbers that he just compiled by being in the league as long as he did. His numbers are Ken Griffey Jr.'s. Mm-hmm. Ken Griffey Jr. actually has better Ken Griffey Senior has better numbers than Pete Rose. If you take those longevity numbers out, and now knowing what we know about stats and all those adjusted things, the OPS, the adjusted OPS, his numbers don't warrant him being in the Hall of Fame. His batting average is 177. His OPS is like 190. So like, he's not in the top 100 in any category that matters. And you're going to say the runs and hits matter, but those are longevity records. He was never, not one season in his entire career, the best player on his team. I will shut up and now let you talk.
Just dumb. 4, 2, 5, 6. That's all you got to say. That's
no, you
greatest player of all
you're not
time.
leaving it at that. I've already talked about that.
Player that's ever lived.
He's just being
no one's ever been better than him.
There's nobody in baseball that knows baseball that
puts
Browns. Pete Rose in the top 20 players of all time.
The Browns can't talk about Reds baseball.
I'm not talking about Browns.
You think Brian Sipe is the greatest quarterback that's ever lived?
No. It's Bernie Kosar.
Vinny Testaverde or Bernie Kosar?
You better bring something better than that.
What else do I need to bring? It's a record that will never be broken, ever.
But that record makes him, that means Johnny Vandermeer is the greatest pitcher of all time.
No, it doesn't. He's not even close.
Pete Rose isn't even close to the best player of all time. Nobody that knows baseball would put Pete Rose in the top 20 players of all time.
Who do you think's better? Probably who is the idiot? Carlos Bell. What the hell is that second baseman's name that played for the Indians back in the day? Yeah, that's probably your favorite player.
I am not saying Carlos Baerga is better than Pete Rose. Again, remember what I said when I started this. I like Pete Rose. He was one of my favorite players growing up. But the numbers, we romanticize Pete Rose because everybody knows the name. He's a household name. He broke that record with such a big media thing. But his numbers don't warrant him being in the Hall of Fame if you take out the longevity records.
Longevity record. You mean the greatest record of all time?
It's not the greatest record of all time.
What's the greatest record of all time?
I don't know. Help me out, Scott, because I don't know what the greatest record of all time is.
16th year OPS percentage, is that the greatest record?
No.
Nobody cared about that.
That's a great record, and I think that alone gets him in the Hall of Fame.
Agreed. I agree. I'm not disagreeing with that.
There's two things here. Does he belong in the Hall of Fame, and is he one of the greatest Reds players of all time? Absolutely one of the greatest Reds players of all time for a number of reasons. I don't necessarily agree. In fact, I don't agree that he's the greatest player of all time. But no question in my mind, he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. But do you think he's even a top 20 player in the history of baseball?
Probably not.
Other than his name and that record, it's not even close. There's people that have, like ESPN came out with a ranking system recently that had him 34, and you have to look at the people that were voting for that.
Nobody watches it anymore.
All I'm saying is that's the highest I've ever even seen him is 34. Again,
he should be number one.
Oh God! All right,
on all lists.
Well, this debate is just going to go on. We'll break it out into social media because it's insane. Again.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jay, this kind of leads into something else. Like maybe who is considered the greatest player of all time?
It'll be an Indian, I promise you.
Well, okay, no, it won't be a great. So I think this is a conversation we're going to have, and episode we'll probably have at some point. Almost every list you're ever going to see is going to say Babe Ruth, and I will disagree with that. I think again. Not so much a compiler, but the time he grew up. I mean, there's other players that would take in front of him, and almost everybody, every ranking you're ever going to see is going to say Babe Ruth, and they're going to say Willie Mays. I will take Willie Mays over Babe Ruth every single day, all day long. Mm-hmm. He was a better all-around player, and everybody can bring up, okay, he was a pitcher, and he was a great pitcher. You know, look at the competition he was playing at and everything else at that time. And you know, not that Babe Ruth wasn't a great player, but he was a media star. He was a media star at the time. And yes, he hit all the home runs and everything else, but you had Maris, and we're going to talk about somebody in a little bit that's on that list. But Willie Mays is, to me, the greatest player of all time.
He's second to Pete Rose, of course. But,
Jesus.
But
what do you guys think greatest player of all time?
What I like about the Babe, I'll say this. What I like about the Babe is he was like a real man, right? You get drunk, he'd show up hammered,
puking before the
game, disheveled, drinking and smoking in the dugout and go hit a home run. And he can't even run around the damn bases. He's got to walk because he's too fat, which is American.
Yeah, you gotta hit the ball far if you're gonna be that thing.
But I can't run. I'm either striking out or hit a home run because I can't run around the fucking base.
I guarantee you, if we had Babe Ruth at his prime against Big Papi, Babe Ruth would look like a child.
Of course. Papi's a huge dude.
Who should not be in the Hall of Fame. Anyway, so who do you guys think is the greatest player of all time?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'd have to put some thought into that.
Kevin?
I will say that it's not fair to go across eras like every other sport, right?
When
you look at the NBA, it's always the MJ versus LeBron thing. But it's not, the game was different. Like you can go back to Ty Cobb era when they're throwing at your head if you looked at them funny.
Right. No,
like the game's different. I would be fine with going with best players of their era.
Yeah.
But never, like, I don't like an overall best player.
No, I agree. It's a very difficult thing. I think the easiest sport to do it in is baseball because they have adjusted stats and so forth. But again, that doesn't tell how great a player was, how good a player was. But I think it's easier in baseball. And there's some things that are just glaring. And I will say one thing about the ESPN list. And I have a show coming up about that because there's some things like, and you and I might differ on this, Kevin, but I don't know. Clayton Kershaw being 57 on that list is ridiculous. Okay, take away his postseason, not great. And the reason his postseason is so bad is Dave Roberts doesn't take him fucking out in the seventh inning. But besides that,
and Mattingly as well.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Mattingly. But you know, regular season, you can't tell me he's not a top 5 pitcher of all time. As
left-handers, he's number 2. I would behind Koufax.
Yeah, exactly.
So
having him 57, but
Koufax is number 1.
The most glaring one to me is I think this is just like it was an oversight on their list because again, it is an impossible task. But there's nobody on the planet that's ever watched baseball or knows anything about baseball that would put Pedro Martinez as the second best pitcher in the history of baseball.
No.
But he's the second best pitcher in baseball.
He's also on Baseball Tonight on ESPN, so you got to pad that.
I have to look at it. I have a hard time putting him in the top 10, but I haven't looked at it that closely. I've seen other lists that put him 7, 8, 9, 10 as pitchers, but the number 2 pitcher of all time? What?
Mm-hmm. Well, you also, again, the across era thing, right? Who, like back in the day,
Christy Matthews.
People would throw double hitters. Like there were pitchers that threw double hitters by themselves, right? They would just go throw a double. They'd go out and throw 18 innings.
Yeah.
And who was it that threw a no hitter and then like a one hitter?
Yeah,
back to back.
Lefty Grove. Somebody did.
Like, you get a blister on your thumb today, and you're out for 7 weeks because you're injured. Back then, you're making $20 a game or whatever it was that they made, and you're going to pitch no matter what. So he's not even close to the. He was a great pitcher for his time, no doubt about it. But he's not. He also tried to kill Don Zimmer.
Yeah, true. I'll never forget him pushing Don Zimmer down. Yeah, I don't dislike Pedro, but he wasn't the second best pitcher of all time. All right, we got to move on.
Not at all.
We got to move on.
Let's go.
All right. So this, again, the Pete Rose conversation we cut short. This one we may have to cut short. We're just gonna let it go. We're gonna let it flow. I'm gonna get Kevin's first. I'm gonna get Kevin's Mount Rushmore of the Reds. Okay, Pete Rose is one of them. All right.
Of course. Barry Larkin would be one of them. I would give that to him.
Okay.
He deserves it. And then you get into the big red machine, Joe Morgan. How do you say no to Joe Morgan, right? How do you say no to him? So after him, then Johnny Bench has to be the last one. It's hard not to, and you can change these around from like Tony Perez or George Foster or whatever you want to change them around to, but they're always going to be those players. It's funny that Larkin is the only, and I would say modern day because it was the 90s, but player that I think of because the Reds kind of, went to shit for, they still are in the shitter, but he's the only one that I would include.
Your list is a solid list, except for one glaring.
Well, it's the accurate. It's actually
glaring freaking omission. So we're gonna see what Scott has. I'm a little bit in shock now. I'll be really shocked if Scott doesn't have what. Okay, go ahead, Scott. What do you have?
Okay, so I've got two of the same as he does. I've got Johnny Bench and Barry Larkin.
Ooh, that's not where I thought you were going, Scott.
Because he's smarter than you.
I've also got, and here's the thing. I went with a number of things. I went with like my favorite players I remember playing, and like maybe different eras over the past half century. So I got Johnny Bench. I've got Barry Larkin. I've got Joey Votto. And I've got Frank Robinson.
You have 4 or 5.
That's fair.
5.
That's fair. Frank Robinson's fair.
That's 4.
So you have Morgan, Larkin, Bench, and Robinson. Is that right?
No, I didn't say Morgan.
Oh, you didn't say Morgan. Wow. No. You don't have Joe Morgan.
You could put Kluski in there too. You could put Ted Kluski.
Shut up, Kevin. So
you could put him in there. He's one of the greatest of all time.
No, he's not.
Yeah, Ted Kluski was. You said Ted Kluski, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had him on my all-time lineup as one of my first baseman options too, for sure. Like I said, to me, this was when I think of the Reds, I think of Frank Robinson. Johnny Bench is my all-time favorite player, and then Barry Larkin, one of the greatest Reds of all. And then I think modern day wise, Joey Votto. I think he's got the numbers to prove it.
God, I sorry. I'm so for Mitch now that I just can't even.
Albert Bell's not on the list.
Oh, sorry. You don't have Morgan. So I'm missing somebody. Hold on. Votto. Yeah, Votto. Jesus. You're not taking Hall of Famers in front of Joey Votto. Okay.
Joey Votto will be a Hall of Famer. Guarantee it.
He's a borderline Hall of Famer, and only because it's watered down. You're saying that you're giving Joey Votto over Joe Morgan.
I said it's a combination of things for me. It's with my heart. It's with different eras. And I think if you look over the last half century, those are 4 of the greatest Reds that have ever been there.
So is half century now not include the Reds machine, their big red machine? I don't know how
going back to the big red machine on till today.
I don't know how you don't put Joe Morgan on that list. I'm sorry, Scott. I understand you liking Joey Votto, and I do think he'll get in, but only he'll get in because the Hall of Fame is what it is now. Joe Morgan to be on this list is probably the most shocking thing I've seen in any show I've done so far. And I've said some shocking stuff. I like Joey Votto, and I think he'd be 5th or 6th on this list, worthy of consideration, but in front of Joe Morgan. It's interesting that you both put Barry Larkin on this list. So you did not put Pete Rose on this list, Scott.
No, because I don't think that Pete Rose is. I love Pete Rose for what he did and who he was, and obviously he's the hit king. Those are the things right there. But if I had to pick 4 players to start my team with, these are the 4 players I would start with.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, again, Pete Rose, as great as he was, I'm not saying he was a good player, a very good player for a very long time. He was never a great player. He was never the best player. He was shut up, Kevin. He was never the best team on any team. The Expos, the Phillies. He was never the best player on any team he ever played for. And I mean, yeah, I'm shocked. I didn't think you guys were going that. For Kevin, I mean, your list is,
the best. It's the answer key. Just put that down. That's the right answer.
Bench and Morgan, again, are no-brainers as far as I'm concerned. I did not go Pete Rose as well. But how in the hell you don't have Frank Robinson on this list is insane.
More because he's before my time, not because he's not one of the greatest. He's before my time. That's why.
He's arguably one of the top 10 players in the history of baseball.
9 behind Pete Rose, of course.
Yes, he went to the Orioles after that, but he played longer for the Reds. He won the Triple Crown the year he got traded. But still, his Reds career alone, hands down, the greatest Reds career of all time. Nothing's even close.
So you basically agree with me except for one guy.
Well, yeah, Robinson instead of Rose. And it did come down to, for me, it came down to Larkin or Rose. It came down to Larkin or Rose for me. And so I took a deep dive into the numbers between the two. And again, you take away those longevity records, Barry Larkin's numbers are better. And Pete Rose was a shitty defensive player everywhere he went. His major league average for his career, defensive WAR, is -4. He was not a good defensive player. Yeah, he played all those positions, and it did give managers flexibility and everything else. But he was a subpar defensive player his entire career.
Typical Browns fan.
You can roll your eyes all you want to. It's true. The stats are the stats.
Browns,
He was never known for his defensive prowess.
So Jay,
yeah.
If you're gonna go stats, Joey Votto, when he's done, is gonna have more home runs, more RBIs, more hits, and a better on-base percentage than Joe Morgan in his career.
When he's done, the done is close.
He's already blown past him in home runs.
You're right, but you have to take in consideration the era he played in. Joey Votto's in an offensive era. You have to take the adjusted OPS that adjusts for those things because nobody was sitting. Again, Hank Aaron never hit 40 home runs. He's 755. He never hit over 40 home runs. So you have to take in consideration the time they played in. You can't tell me that some of these players, what these numbers would have been for players like Joe Morgan and Johnny Bench if they played in today's game. How many home runs would they hit? How many RBIs would they hit? Again, I know it's an impossible conversation, and you can't just take stats on stats. But you have to factor in some of those things. Again, when you take care of especially the way back players, the pitchers is Christy Mathewson's and all those players. It's hard. It's impossible, but you have to take in consideration some of that. And you have to also take in consideration where they were considered in their era. If you put Ty Cobb on the Yankees right now, Ty Cobb probably would have been Ty Cobb and still probably would have been the best overall player of all time. He's another one that might be in the list of Willie Mays and Ty Cobb as best player of all time. Those players are probably transcendent, but what'd you say?
But the thing about like a Ty Cobb, when we talk about eras, the thing about a Ty Cobb is what did he do? He was the dirtiest fucking player in the history today. Back then, he just played baseball. I mean, he was even considered dirty in his time. He would try to cripple you. He would try to take your knee out. Today, there'd be lawsuits and every other thing about it. And it's like,
but he wouldn't have done the same things because the rules are different. You can't. I agree with you. Everybody knows he was the dirtiest player of all time. But he couldn't come in spikes high.
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that there's a guy that existed in this time period and then another guy that existed in this time.
Yeah.
And the rules are completely different between those two eras, right? I mean, this was an era when if you looked at a guy funny, they'd throw at your head and try to end your career, and they didn't wear batting helmets,
Right.
And now, God forbid, if you get a ball inside, people are upset about it, Look at Nolan Ryan. I mean, even Nolan Ryan, when you think about him, he's inside. He's like, you're on my plate. I'm putting it right in your ear.
Yep.
Right. And, you know, the batters got up and they played. Today it would be, oh, my God, we're going to suspend you for 7 years and do everything you had to.
Yeah, that's what, you know, I agree. It's an impossible task, and ESPN's list is impossible. But there's some things that just, you know, again, you take in consideration all that. And, you know, again, you can't put Pedro Martinez as the second best pitcher of all time, regardless of any of that.
Close. He's not even close. He's not in the top 10, I wouldn't.
No. I mean, I think he's close to that, but I wouldn't put him in it. But, you know, anyway, so, yeah, I mean, again, baseball's an interesting argument. And I knew when we got to the Mount Rushmore, I'm shocked. And I get what you're saying about Votto. And he very well, I said earlier in the show, I think he very well may get in. In my mind, is he a Hall of Famer? No. I think there's a lot of players that have been introduced in the last 20 years that aren't Hall of Famers. The Robin Yount's, yes, they're in. But there's a lot of like players that are marginal players, not marginal, but good players for a long time that get in. And I think Joey Votto's one of those players. And again, not that he's not a great player. He's meant a lot to the city of Cincinnati. Been with him his whole career, which I value. But in my mind, is he a Hall of Famer? No. Will he get in? Probably yes. In my mind, it came down to Larkin or Rose. And
you chose wrong.
Did I? I want to.
It's not wrong. I mean, I didn't
have this
only
conversation with
Robinson was because it was just I was doing my lifetime, I guess, is the way I looked at it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm assuming that's the case because Robinson is, well.
Let's go.
We're gonna keep you on for this, Kevin. I have you signing off now. We're keeping you on.
Let's go.
So we were gonna sign you off here, but I don't have a camera thing. I was after the Mount Rushmore, we were going to cut you off. I should have cut you off in the first 2
That's
minutes.
Really mean. I'm insensitive.
So we've already talked. We've already talked this through. I do not know where you're going, Scott, because I'm a little scared now. I'm not going to lie. Let's see where you're going to go for now. Let me say, I have baseball cards that are going to go in these spots. If you've seen any of my other shows, if you pick anybody outside of these baseball cards, I can't help you. I can't. I'm just going to put the word up.
So there's 2 baseball cards you have for 2. You have 2 people that you're considering as the best of all time.
There's only one. Anyway, Scott, who do you have as the best Red of all time? Greatest Red of all time.
I just want to say that when Joey Votto's career is over, you are going to look at his stats, and I don't care what you say about the era he played in. His stats will warrant him being in the Hall of Fame, no doubt.
Okay.
Second, my all-time
compared to other
Reds
first
player,
basemen of his generation. No
question.
You're out of your mind. If you're going to take all other first basemen in his generation, you compare them.
Yeah, we'll actually have to do that offline.
All right.
My all-time favorite
Mark
Red
McGwire is not
Bench.
in the Hall of Fame. Just saying.
Well, let's look at his stats across the board.
All right. We'll look that up anyway.
Yeah,
because you're not going to say Joey Votto.
Let's-
You're not going to say Joey Votto here. So, are you?
Johnny Bench.
All right.
Johnny Bench.
All right. Yeah. There's 2 choices. Now I got to find which one's Johnny Bench here. Hold on. I don't know which one's which. That's Rose. That's Votto. Nope. That's Tony Perez. I got to find it. Nope. There's Barry Larkin. I didn't name these. Do I not have Johnny Bench? There's Joe Morgan. Oh my gosh. Do I not have Johnny Bench? No way. What?
You're fired.
No, there's Johnny Bench. There's Johnny Bench. I can't argue with that. There's no way I'm going to argue with that. I do want to see what Kevin has to say, because if he says Rose, I'm going to punch him in the dick when I see him.
It would be between 2 people.
It is between 2 people. I agree with you there. There's only 2
Johnny
people in this argument.
Pete Rose. Pete Rose.
Pete Rose is not in this list.
Yes, he is. He is. By the way, I want to give it a shout out to Chuck Guts because he's made the smartest comment on this whole fucking thing. Johnny Bench, yes, and we should meet in Vegas, yes.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin and I were in Vegas many times together. It's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're saying Johnny Bench, Kevin?
Pick Bench or Rose. Pick.
I'm gonna pick Bench because Pete Rose isn't in there. There's only two. There's only two that it can be. Johnny Bench,
Frank Robinson,
and Frank Robinson.
Yeah.
There's only two it can be. And so I took a deep dive because my first instinct was Frank Robinson. I took a deep dive at the numbers. Bench won 2 MVPs. Robinson won 1. He won the Triple Crown the year he left. But I think a lot of people, especially of our age, remember him as being an Oriole and then, again, with the Indians late in his career, which he did nothing with them. His Reds
I
career,
actually remember him as a manager.
Yeah, he was a player manager with the Indians. That's right, in '77.
Yeah.
But he did nothing with the Indians in those 3 years he was there. But his Reds career, statistically, is great. Again, they were both Rookie of the Years. Robinson was in the top 10 of MVP 6 times in his 10 years career in Cincinnati. 6 times he was in the top 10. He won once, Bench won twice. Bench had a much longer career. He played 18, 19 years career with the Reds. Robinson had 10 years, his best 10 years. Again, Frank Robinson to me, in a lot of people, it's not just me saying this. Frank Robinson is the most underrated player in the history of baseball. He's a top 10 player. You're in a lot of lists. You're going to see him 13, 14, 15, somewhere around there. Some you're going to see him as high as 5 or 6, ahead of like Barry Bonds and players like that. He was a 5-tool player. To me, it was Frank Robinson. I did look at it, and I love Johnny Bench. Growing up as a catcher, I love Johnny Bench, but I had to go Frank Robinson.
Between these two players, the way that I would look at it is this. One of them is the greatest player that's ever played their position. Period. Yep. The other,
right.
Not that he's not a great player as a position, but he's not the greatest player that's ever played his position. And that would be true for Pete Rose. That would be true for any other player that you put in, because Frank Robinson's one of the greatest top 10 greatest players of all time.
Yep.
But if you're going to go just red, it has to be Johnny Bench, in the sense that he is the best player that's ever played that position. I mean, he invented a way to stop a ball. He didn't block the ball. He one-handed it. You know?
No, I'm not gonna disagree with Johnny Bench. Again, I was between the two. And again,
Johnny Bench played a position that he basically set the standard for,
without question.
And defensively and offensively, he was just stellar on both sides.
And he can hold 7 baseballs in his hands.
Yes, correct. He can.
Again, Johnny Bench definitely the best catcher of all time. You can make somewhat of an argument, but he's going to in everybody's conversation, he's going to be one of the top 3 catchers in the history of baseball, without question. And most people have him as number 1. The longevity he had in Cincinnati. Say it again.
Who are the other 2?
Carlton Fisk.
Fisk might be up there. You're catching me when I've drank all these.
Mike Piazza.
Piazza would be up there offensively. Again, that's a good point, which we talked about earlier, is he grew up in that offensive era. For me, again, us growing up, we valued defense and everything when we grew up. Now they don't as much. The Hall of Fame is based on offensive numbers.
Pudge Rodriguez.
Pudge Rodriguez, definitely offensive and defensively. He's definitely up there. Molina won't be up there because of offensive numbers. To me, the best defensive catcher I've ever seen, even over Johnny Bench, is Yadimir Molina.
Even though he played for St. Louis.
Yes, I know. It's really hard for me to say. I get that. But yeah, Bench was definitely the best, one of the best players in his position for sure. Frank Robinson wasn't, but that's where I think Frank Robinson is one of the most underrated players, is because he was a 5-tool player. He was great. He's a great defender. And he even played great first base late in his career. Another person that falls into that category, as far as I'm concerned, everybody knows his home run numbers. Hank Aaron was a 5-tool player. Everybody remembers him as he's old and heavier and, going after the home run chase and playing right field. But he had a cannon of arm. He came up as a shortstop. He played shortstop for many years. He was an incredible player. So Frank Robinson and go ahead.
But Jay, I got to agree with Kevin on this one. I think that when you talk about, and I think Frank Robinson was great. When you talk about the greatest Red, Johnny Bench spent his entire career with Cincinnati.
Yep.
He basically set, like I said, set the tone for all catchers to come. He was great from both sides. I don't know how you don't, as far as the greatest Red, I don't think there's any question as to who the greatest Red ever was.
I'm not going to disagree with you. It was only these two for me. And I think most Reds fans, I think most baseball fans would probably go with Johnny Bench on this. So I'm not going to nitpick on this at all. I think part of my pick comes from that. I think Frank Robinson is one of the most underrated players in the history of baseball. So I think part of that comes into this for me, not being a Reds fan. I certainly cannot fault Johnny Bench because that's who I had. That's who I had when those two, and it was close. It wasn't like it was a drop dead. It was Frank Robinson and everybody else. It was these two and everybody else. I can't fault Johnny Bench. Ironically, Scott and I talked about earlier a week ago or so about how a lot of those Red players weren't necessarily the most likable players off the field. And Johnny Bench was one of those. He had that nice, mystique and aura about him, and he did all the commercials and so forth, but he was known for being a jackass. Tom Seaver.
Even in retirement, that was true too.
Say it again, Kevin?
Even in retirement, he was the same way. Like he just didn't want to.
Yeah.
Certain people can't deal with fans and, that kind of shit. And they get, I don't know how I would be. It's hard for me to judge a person that way because it's like, I don't know how I'd be if every time I went to dinner, there'd be people coming to my table and, usually it's hot women that come to my table.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I've been with you many a time and he says that, but then he's like a babbling idiot. He's like, oh, can I buy you a drink? One of the things too is like, it's like how much money these guys make. How much money would Frank Robinson make today? He'd be a 400 million player. And some of these players are going to go down as the all-time greatest. Mookie Betts is a great player. All these players are really great players, but what would Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and, all these great players make now in this era? What would Willie Mays make in this era?
And you also think about it because they're going to go out and they're like, well, I don't need a trainer. I don't care that my leg's broken. I'm going to play anyway, and I'm going to make some great catch in the outfield. And, there's no medical back in those days, right? Nope. So you play or you don't get paid pretty much.
Right.
Remember back in the day of the trains when they took the trains, like Ty Cobb, guys. Yeah. They had to have a job in the off season. It's like, I'm coming here and I'm making a little money and I'm famous, but fuck, I got to go work in a coal mine because I can't live. The amount of money those players would make today, it's hard to say, right? It's hard to compare eras.
Right. Well, baseball really changed like in 1980 when Nolan Ryan and going to the Astros and sort of, but Pete Rose, his rookie year or his second year, he made $46,000. Again, in the bigger pig, like that's a good salary. That's a really good salary in 1967 or whatever it was. That's a lot of money.
Now the bullpen catcher makes twice that.
Oh yeah, the coaches, the assistant to the president coach makes.
That's what I need to be, a bullpen catcher. I could sit in a chair behind the plate.
Yeah, that's the job. That's definitely the job. Pete Rose made
travel all over. You hang out with the players.
Pete Rose made $1 million in 1986 as the player manager. That's the only time he made $1 million. And it was only those last few years that he made good money. Prior to 1978 or 1979, he made under $300,000.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, again, we can have this debate on Pete Rose for a long time, and I hope to continue it because now that I'm armed with stats and I have other people thinking the same way as I do. Again, we remember Pete Rose is the
no
man,
one thinks like you do.
the hit king. They should. The world would be a much better place.
It would be horrible.
Uh,
Fake news is what it would be.
you're wearing that crazy jersey. Again, they've been to the Super Bowls. I get
See
that.
that? Speaking of Obi Toppin is the greatest
Hey,
NCAA
I'm
player
a
to
fan.
live.
I'm a fan. We've discussed this before. I'm a fan. I feel bad that Dayton got screwed out of the NCAA tournament for COVID because that team.
Wait, was the game that we watched the game that Dayton beat Ohio State in the tournament?
No, I don't think so,
No,
Scott.
that
Was it?
wasn't that day.
It might have been.
Because we went
I
that
don't
day
think
to
so.
Happy and we watched Dayton beat Ohio State at the last minute, right, the last second shot.
But it wasn't a happy
and then
ending.
we played out all fucking night.
I don't remember the name of the bar, but it wasn't a happy ending.
Okay.
I do remember that day, though. That was the day that we watched that, and then, no. Do you remember when we had... So, Kevin and I used to watch Ohio State at a bar called The Shack in Santa Monica. I don't know if you remember that bar, Scott. It was a Philadelphia Eagles bar and a Browns or a Ohio State bar. They closed, and then we went to Happy Ending in Hollywood. And
Which also became a Philadelphia Eagles bar and an Ohio State bar.
did it?
Yeah, they were the Eagles. That's where the Eagles fans went to.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
We have legendary times at that bar and a lot of friends from that bar. But at Christmas time, so those, probably I think it was probably the Michigan game of the year, week before that. There was the Toys for Tots thing. Box was outside in the front of the lobby at the bar, and I had a whole bunch of games in my car to donate for Christmas, and so I went to the car because I had them in my car. I hadn't gotten rid of them yet, so I went to the car and put 24 games in the box because there was like nothing in there. It's like I felt bad for the kids. I put 24 new games in there because that's what I do, and I don't know what Chuck is saying. Not quite sure it's appropriate, but I'll put it anyhow.
No, that looks okay. I
Well,
like
anything
that.
with massage parlor and Vegas for you is gonna
More
be good.
Koreatown for me, but it'd be okay.
But so I give these 24 games to the bartenders and everything that we know, and then all of a sudden we're sitting at our table and a round of shots comes over, and there's like a whole bunch of them on there. I'm like, well, we didn't order these, and so it wasn't Toys for Tots, it was Shots for Tots.
Mm-hmm.
24 shots. I believe that's the infamous night, Kevin, by the way.
Mm-hmm. It is. I had to turn the volume down because I'll get in trouble. again.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to play with each
Although
other.
I'm the man of the house and I make the rules here.
Obviously. Yeah, we weren't allowed to play with each other for a long time after that. But I did meet Stevie
good.
Wonder that night. Anyway.
Yeah, you did.
I did. At 3:00 in the morning, I'm in a hospital, and all of a sudden there's Stevie Wonder. Anyway, yeah, Shots for Tots. Yeah, we're getting aside here, but yeah, this was a fun episode. Beer aside, thank you, Scott, for sending me the beers. This was great. This is how I intended the show to be. This one is killer.
You should have Scott and I on every episode.
We should. I'm okay with that.
We'll drop knowledge about everything that you even try to think about talking about.
You'll drop bullshit and and just try to get me worked up.
Probably a smart one, and I'll just be the smart ass.
Well, again, where's Chuck's comment? Here, this one. Yeah. Kevin's eye rolls are hilarious. Yeah, Kevin's eye rolls make me want to punch him. But he knows he gets me worked up. Even after all this time, he knew he's going to say shit just to aggravate me, and like some of the stuff he doesn't even believe. He doesn't really believe Pete Rose is the greatest Red of all time.
Yes, I do.
No, okay. I'll give you maybe Red. You don't think he's the greatest baseball player of all time?
Mm-hmm. Best of all time.
See, anyway,
we could meet in Vegas or Key West.
I love Key West. I spent a lot of time in Key West. I like Key West. I have good memories there.
You go to the Naked Bar. Kevin,
we've been there before. I'm not going.
You haven't been there.
The only time I've ever been in jail is in Key West. There you go. You remember that story?
No.
Good. We're not gonna tell it now. Anyway, so again, Scott, thank you for the beers. This was a really great treat. This is how I intended the show to be. I knew this episode was going to be fun just because it was the Reds, and I was struggling with the Mount Rushmore. And again, they have so many great players, such a great tradition. Again, it's one of those 5 franchises, just a deep tradition in baseball. And being able to reconnect with you, Scott, over these last 2 shows. And, we've talked about other things that I want to talk to you about, by the way. So tomorrow when you're at work, give me a call. And Kevin, you're like my stupid brother that I hate. That will, I can't wait.
I have a terribly small penis.
Jesus.
Well, Chuck is like my stupid brother that I hate. Wait, actually, he is my stupid brother I hate.
I don't even know what you said about penises, Kevin, but I won't even go there. Because remember, we compared and I won. So, no, joking. Because I'm glad my wife's not listening because she'd probably say, no, you didn't. Anyway, but again, great connecting with both you guys, and I can't wait to get down to Miami. Kevin and I have only seen each other once since I left California. It was a brief time in Chicago, so I'm looking forward to getting down to Miami. Or all of us meet in Chicago?
Certain kind of bar we met at.
What?
We met at a certain kind of bar.
No, we met at a bar on Rush Street. It wasn't one of those bars, Kevin. I don't know what Chuck posted here because the font's too small.
Lipstick.
Oh, wow. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I'm out of it. Chuck's the youngest of us all here, so he's I don't know what he means. But yeah, no, we should all meet in Chicago. We gotta orchestrate a meet in Chicago.
That I would do for
a meet
sure.
in Cincinnati.
Chicago.
I'm up for it. Let's put something together, man.
I will definitely work on that. Again, thank you guys for being on the show. It's great seeing you guys again, and again, seemed like there's no time has passed, and talking about the Reds and baseball. And I know this went way long, but nobody's listening.
So she said.
Hey, Kevin, good seeing you again. Hopefully we'll see you.
You too,
hopefully
buddy.
we'll see you soon.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You could fucking leave Jay at home, but that'd be great.
And you'd have no fun. You'd have no fun without me. All right. Love you guys.
See you guys later.
We'll see you soon. We're
Deuces.
out.